Hello brewers, hello YouTube, welcome to another episode. We're finally getting around to brewing our interpretation of the Earl Grey Sour we had in Seoul. If you haven't checked out that video, go check it out. It's where the brewer and the hua go on tour. It's where Claire and I go over to Seoul and check out the craft beer scene there. Turns out it's amazing, so check that video out. Today this is what we're going to brew, or prepare what we're going to brew. We're going to pick our ingredients. Remember, we know nothing about this beer really other than the style. So it's a Berliner Weiss, doesn't say it on it just because it's in those style guidelines. A couple of things to remember when you're brewing a beer is if you pick a style, so in this case Berliner Weiss, you got to remember these styles have been around since Berliner Weiss, the 15th century, became popular in the 17th century. So 300 years plus they've been around. Brewing, when you pick a style like that, there's a reason it's been around for 300 years. It's a fucking good beer, it's a fucking good style, so they stand the test of time in that respect. Things to remember with the Berliner Weiss, 3.8 to 4.5%. You want 50% wheat malt, or roughly a 50-50 on the Pilsner to wheat. You want to fruit it, you want a high carbonation, so it's actually referred to as the champagne of the north, and usually there's a fruit additive after the fact. So at the arse end of fermentation, we'll add some fruit to the fermenter. In this case, we're going to add some Earl Grey tea, which we've teamed up with a local business. It's called the Berry Tea Shop. Check them out if you can, their socials. You can buy online too with them. We actually went into Berry, it's only 40 minutes north of here. We tried all their teas. We came up with their Earl Grey. We smelt all the teas. This had a citrus element to it, their Earl Grey, so that's what we picked. We're going to put it in the whirlpool for 15 minutes at 85 degrees. So we just did a dose rate calculation on a cup of tea, or a cuppo, which is about 3 grams per cup, usually for 4 minutes at 100 degrees C. So we're going to bring that down because we don't want that to be the main ingredient, so we don't want it to stand out and overpower everything. We're going to bring it back to nearly 2.5 grams per litre. So it's basically an aroma addition only. So we don't want that tea taste where it becomes a little bit bitter and astringent, which tea can. So we brought it right back to 2.5 grams per litre for 15 minutes at 85 degrees. That's just hopefully, we don't know, I could tip this down the drain yet. We'll see. That's what we're thinking with the tea. So just an aroma stand, which would usually be called a hop stand, and then we'll knock out, so it'll probably take 20 minutes to knock out as well. So the lemon's going to be added in the fermenter after fermentation and VDK rest. Cold crash, remove the yeast, and then we're going to add the lemon puree. We purchased 20 kilos of lemon puree. I'm going to add 10 and then arouse it with CO2 through the fermenter, do a taste test, and if it's not enough, I can double that up to 20, which will be roughly 8 grams per litre. I'll show you how to do that throughout this whole process. So we're going to go, once again, grain to glass, and to the point about marketing. I always say for every one brewer you need 2 marketers. So Claire and C have already started the can design, designed it, they'll print it off, wrap it around one of our cans, and then it'll go to our graphic designer, Selena. She'll add all the layers and everything, then it gets sent to East Coast Canning, Brendan, and he'll put it into their software, print it out, voila, there's a can. And they'll be available online at the end if I don't pour this beer down the drain. We'll see. I'm pretty confident. I can brew a Berliner Weiss quite easily. Our Husky Weiss got a gold medal at the International Beer Awards, and a lot of that came from the research I did with the Berliner Weiss. Dove deep into the interwebs, went down the rabbit hole of YouTube, and designed a beer to style, completely to style, and it ended up taking out a gold medal at the International Beer Awards, which is nice. Bit of recognition for the wankers. So it's pretty easy to make a beer, especially when you go between the style guidelines. So you stick to a style, you'll brew a good beer. With this one, it's not 100% to style because we're adding the tea, so we've got some variations there. Keeping it on the low side because it's the first time we've brewed it. So we're nearly, 1/4 of what a tea dose would be. But remember, we're just chasing aroma. The other thing is, in a commercial brewery, it's pretty easy to make a beer. Once you're a commercial brewer, you know what's going on. It's quite easy to make a beer. It's very hard to sell a beer. That's where one brewer, 2 marketers comes into it. remember that. It's probably one of the best tips I can give you after owning and operating and brewing all the beer here at Flame and Galah for the last 5 years. That's it. I think we should get into the raw ingredients now. We'll go and get the snifter going, and we'll go through our hops, hop addition. This is where the art comes into it. There's a bit of art in brewing as well as science, and tradition and style. The art comes into it where, as the brewer, you can make the decisions on where the hop additions go in, what hop you choose, what raw ingredients you pick within the style guidelines. All I've got to go off is the memory of Clary and I sitting in the back road in Seoul trying this beer. So that's the memory I've got, and I'm going to try and recreate that in this beer without knowing any of the raw materials or ingredients that they put in it. Let's get to the brew desk. Let's do this. This is where shit gets real. We're at the brew station. A couple of things, so we're going to stick to our style. A couple of things we're going to want. First things first with the fermentables, so the grain. So we're going to go for 1200 litres. We're going to shoot for 1036 original gravity, and our terminal gravity or final gravity, we're going to shoot for 1006. So it's going to be quite dry. Once again, to style. We're going to use 85 kilos of wheat malt, which gives us 44.7%. So when you write a recipe, especially if you're a home brewer and trying to get to the level or start your own brewery, always write your recipes in percentages, whether you're writing them in a book or you get software. Well, the software will do it in percentages for you, but I started in a Bunnings book in 2017. And I used to write them all in kilos, not percentages, and that fucked me along the way. So it's a hot tip, write in percentages. So we've got our 44.7% of wheat malt. Obviously we use Joe Whites. That's who we choose. So we're 44.7% of wheat. We're 75 kilos, which gives us 39.5%. So we're pretty close to that 50-50. We've got the high percentage of wheat. We're going to use Carapils or Carafoam to give us some head retention, and then obviously because it's a wheat beer, we're going to have about between 3 to 5% rice hulls. And then we're going to use, for the hops, we're going to use a European Noble, which is like Saaz, Hallertau, Mandarina Bavaria. We're going to get the nose amongst them for now and see what we're going to use, see what pairs well with our Earl Grey. What we're going to do, we're going to get our beaks into the Earl Grey. This is from the Berry Tea Shop. Check them out. Ah, smells amazing. Citrus, it reminds me of that beer actually, just smelling that. Put me back in Seoul. Put a link in the description below. We're also going to keep any well flock out of this recipe as well, because we want it to be hazy, we want it to look like a cup of tea. Check our hops. I'm leaning more towards Mandarina Bavaria because it's got those citrus characteristics, also like tangerine. So we're just gonna put a couple of pellets in, then we're gonna whack them in our palm. I'm gonna apply some heat and get those oils out. You can start to feel the oils on your hand. We're getting aroma out of it now with that heat, which is nice tangerine, citrus flavours, aromas, sorry, not flavours. It's got nice tangerine and citrus aromas like lime, and it's beautiful. With the Berliner Weiss, we're shooting for an IBU of probably 8 to 10 maximum. It's going to go in after we sour the beer as well. So we're going to sour it in the kettle. So let's now combine these two. So we've got some tea. Smells so good. Smell that, lady. So the other one, I was going to use Saaz, but I think I'm just going to go with Mandarina Bavaria. And it'll just be one addition in the kettle. It's an aroma and bittering hop. So I think we've got about 7 alpha acids on it. Let's have a look. 7.4 on the alpha acids, bittering aroma. So we'll probably have, I think, Definitely some kettle stability, maybe 200 grams at 60 minutes. And then we'll get that aroma out of it, maybe 20 minutes, kilo. Get our IBUs to sit around 8 is the plan. Obviously a Berliner Weiss, it doesn't want to be a bit of beer. Like I said, 8 to 10, 12 IBU, that's the range, that's the style. It's good style, it's lasted 300 years, so let's brew it at that style. All right, let's move on to our lactobacillus, which is going to be our souring agent. It's Safe Sour LP 652, and I choose this one because it gives off citrus aromas out of the lactic acid fermentation. These guys produce CO2 and lactic acid. It's called lactobacillus. It's a bacteria, not a yeast. We'll put the link in the description below on these raw materials as well. And for fermentation, we're going to use good old Chico strain US05, which once we're in the uni tank will oxygenate to between 8 and 10 parts per million. We'll use a benchtop dissolved oxygen meter, which works in the parts per million, not parts per billion. So we're going to pitch our Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is Chico strain US05 at 80 grams per hectolitre. Our Safe Sour LP 652 will be pitched in the kettle at 40 degrees for roughly 24 hours. And that's going to give us a pH of around 3.8. Usually I'll sour our Berliner Weisses down to 3.2, which is about 36 hours in the kettle. This one wasn't as tart when we tried that, so I'm just going to go 24 hours in the kettle, get it down to about 3.7, 3.8 we'll shoot for. All right, so that's a brief overview of the ingredients and how you pick them, how you write a recipe, percentages, remember. Obviously the software helps a lot. Smiling now because we get to brew it. Bit of Japanese fucking engineering here, let me tell you. Come on, baby. That's the choke for the Hulk. It's poor man's grain silo. 75 Pilsner, 25 Carapils, because we choose Joe Whites. So if you want to follow along at home and brew this, if you're a home brewer, we are 44.7% Joe White wheat malt, 39.5% Pilsner, 13.2% Cara foam or Cara Pils, whatever you want to use. And we're going to go for 3 or 4% of rice hulls to avoid that stuck mash that no one wants. We'll see. Let's get this shut up so Ratus has nothing to eat. Important things to know. We've got a feeler gauge, just made, it's an old stainless steel ruler. And we've got a wheat setting for our grain mill. And we've got a barley setting. So we're gonna mill all our wheat first. So check the feeler gauge. Sweet. Brings it out to 3 millimeters for the wheat. You don't wanna crush it, it becomes dough. And then we're gonna get a stuck mash, which we wanna avoid. Always put your mask on when you're handling barley or wheat. Still in the plastic. Shout out to Koi Knives, who made us the Flame and Glow knife. Yeah. We're gonna go preheat the mash tun. Righto, hot liquor tank pump on. So all we're doing now is getting some heat in our mash tun. We're gonna take the mash tun from ambient temperature, which is about 17 degrees Celsius. Gonna bring it up to 40, heat up our stainless. That'll do, we'll let that hot liquor drain out. We're going to check our grist case port is shut and we're going to start mashing in. Just letting all the hot liquor drain out. We're going to check our rakes are okay, nothing wrong with them, no trips. Reverse. Righto, they're good. Now we're going to change our grain mill back. Twist, twist, twist. Check with the feeler, all good. Start our mash in now. So cold liquor, identify. Yep. Hot liquor in as well. We're shooting for 65 degrees C on this. Just going to turn my rakes on now. Just want about 20 mil above our false bottom. And because we're going to have wheat first, we're going to add our rice hulls, or half of them. That's going to help our filtration when we lauter. We've started to verl off now as well, just to help hydrate the grist. In go our mash salts. Most important thing when it comes to a mash is your pH, your water profile, as in calcium chloride, calcium sulfate. And as important, the main important thing when it comes to a mash is your pH. You're going to sit between 5.2 to 5.5. It helps certain enzymes in the mash convert the sugars to fermentable sugars. Just stop that hot liquor going in at the moment. Check our grist as well. It's consistent in how we want it. Feel the beer, be the beer. All right, now we're going to add the rest of our rice hulls. Beautiful. And then our last couple of bags. It's below 200 kilos on our grist, so we're shooting for 600 litres. For a 3-to-1 ratio on our mashing. Righto, all mashed in. Hit our strike temp spot on, 65 degrees C. Now we're just going to run those lauter rakes for the first 15 minutes, back and forth. Mix it all through, mix the rice hulls through, so we don't get a stuck mash. Now we're going to take a pH sample. See if we need any adjustments. Turn that pump off now, the Verloff pump. We've hydrated the grist. We're just going to keep those lauter rakes back and forth. The target for me is 5.2. I like the low end of the pH scale when it comes to a mash, but anywhere up to 5.5 is acceptable. And then you want to check our strike temp. Shooting for 65. Beautiful, mate. All right, let's prepare our sparge water. We've pre-acidified the sparge water, but didn't film it, so bad luck. Now we're going to add our cold liquor. We're going to set our sparge to 78, which is about a degree higher than usual, just because we're good possibility we might get a stuck mash. So we're going to a bit higher, and we're going to change the viscosity, so with our heat. I did a video on a stuck mash too, if you want to check that one out. Fingers crossed, not today. We're going to prep our whirlpool and we're going to sanitize it. That's going to sanitize our heat exchange and our product line. Let's get that done now. I'm just going to use 2% paracetic acid. So it's 300 mils paracetic acid, 150 litres in the whirlpool we're going to put. Grab our product line. What we're doing here is we're sanitising our whirlpool. So we don't want to introduce any foreign bacteria. Like, we want to be in control of our anaerobic fermentation that we're going to have in the kettle. So we're using a lactic acid bacteria called lactobacillus, and what that does, it has an anaerobic respiration, which is a lactic acid fermentation. It's a bacteria, not a yeast. What it does, it metabolizes sugars, turns them into CO2 and lactic acid. It's called an anaerobic respiration because it happens without oxygen. So they don't, not like yeast, they don't need oxygen to kick off. What we've got to do is purge our kettle of any oxygen, and that'll stop that funky smell. Sometimes when you have a sour, if you don't purge your kettle, you'll get that real funky, eggy, like sulfur smell. So purge your kettle of any oxygen. So we've also got to modify our kettle, which we'll do next. So we'll finish filling the whirlpool to our 150 litres, and then we're going to add our cold liquor to the hot liquor tank, bring it down to 78 degrees Celsius. Righto, that's our 150 litres in. So we're going to open up our cold liquor valve, just running the Sani down the sight glass. Now, brewers, we're going to modify our kettle. So we're going to blow our stack Now we're going to get rid of our chimney. Have a look at my kettle too. That's how every brewer's kettle should be. See how clean that cunt is? See how beautifully clean the kettle is? No shit stains up the side, nothing. All right, so we got our 150ml end cap. It's going to block our kettle so we can purge it and have our lactic acid fermentation under pressure. So on goes our kettle cap. And then we're also going to close off our sight glass. Here's our sight glass. We're just going to grab our multis. We're going to nip up. This was all modified by me. So we're going to close off our sight glass now because we're going to have under pressure, an anaerobic fermentation in there without oxygen. So I'm going to put like 10 pound in the top of the kettle once I purge it all out of CO2. Google anaerobic in the absence of air. I think that's what it is. A lactic acid fermentation or lactic acid respiration is a form of fermentation that breaks down sugars into energy, producing lactic acid and CO2. I can't even get my fucking leg up that high anymore. We've reached 78 degrees on our hot liquor, so we're going to shut off our cold liquor in. Riveting entertainment. Now we're going to modify our whirlpool. So we're going to dump out the sanitizer. What we used to do is run the wort through the heat exchange and back into the kettle, but because it's a direct fire kettle, there was a lot of residual heat in the kettle. So we wanted to pitch our bacteria, we wanted to get it down to between 35 degrees C and 40 degrees C. On the higher end's better because you lose temp overnight. And when we were doing this, we found that you'd get to say 50 degrees C and then it'd become harder and harder and you could continue to run until we heated up our glycol and it was too hot. So we couldn't get it down, especially in summer, we couldn't get it down to our 50 degrees C. It just shows you how much residual heat is in the direct fire kettle. So what we do, we send it to the whirlpool and then we grab some paracetic acid and just splash it in the kettle and take out that heat. It also sanitizes the kettle again. Then we can run it from the whirlpool back into the kettle and get our heat, our 40 degrees C, spot on then. The reason we have to modify the whirlpool is because there's no trub. So we want to take it all out of the whirlpool and send it back in. We're going to run from our dump port to our pump and then we can run through our heat exchange and then into the bottom of the kettle. So that was a brief, boring explanation on why we're modifying. Yeah. What usually would happen, this cone would fill up with trub and we'd pull off the side, so any hop debris in the bottom would not go through to the fermenter or the uni tank. So we're going to close that valve and we're going to take from the dump valve into the pump. All right, so that's that modified. 15 minutes to go in the mash. We're going to start the Verl off. We've set it pretty low, 16 hertz. Once again, because it's a wheat beer, we've got a big bit of dough in there. We don't want to get a stuck mash. We've done our best with the rice hulls and the strike water to get those two spot on, but we'll see how we go. All right, the Verloff's about to finish, so we're just going to preheat our kettle. Get the lid on schneisen tight. Schneisen tight, yeah. Going to preheat our kettle. Yeah. Hear that? See how we got pressure in our kettle now? All right, kettle preheated. Close the dump port. So we're going to slowly open our transfer to the kettle so we don't pull that mash down. And then slowly close the Verl off. And then we're going to kick the kettle in the guts. Just don't want to do your kettle up all the way because we've got it all closed off. You'll build pressure. We just leave our lid loose. Our man way personal access hole. It's good looking work. No grain following. We're starting to get grain islands. So we're going to start introducing our hot liquor for the sparge. We're in the shit here. Hey, this is Brewing though, motherfucker. We've lost one of our sparge. I'm going to be digging through the mash. See, this separates the sparge and we've lost one. So we're going to have to use our spray balls. It'll just punch a hole in the bed. There's going to be quite an annoying fly sparge. Watch to the end, watch me dig through the mash. That'll be entertaining. We're just going to slowly introduce hot liquor and just keep 50 millimetres of water above the whole mash. That helps with the fly sparge as well. Any more and what we do, we'll get a stuck mash because we'll compact the mash too much. So we're just going to use the spray ball arms and then just close them off. It's not ideal using the spray ball arms to do a fly sparge. We're starting to crush the grain bed. We're beginning to get a stuck mash. I'm going to take the punt and whack a bit more on top. Hopefully the grain bed's set enough that the pressure of the hot liquor should help. Or not, or it'll just get stuck. But that's brewing, you know. So we haven't even had to slow our hertz yet. So we're still at 16 hertz on the fly sparge. Just going to bring that temp up on our hot liquor tank to 80. And we're still maintaining 16 hertz. Just that extra bit of pressure on our grain bed that's pushing it through the wort grant. It's a fine line between a stuck mash and enough pressure. But if your grain bed's set, especially with the rice holes, it can help. So I've gone from 50 millimetres above the grain bed to about 150 now. So we've got that extra weight. Look at mud guts now. And I'm gonna add hot liquor to it and it'll show the pressure on top of the mash bed, how it pushes it through. And this only works if your grain bed's set. So we're nearly there, nearly at our 12 hec. We've shut off the sight glass because it's going to be a kettle sour, but I know the distance between the spray ball and the wort, so we're sitting at about 1,000 litres now, so we're just going to do our last runnings check. Just make sure we never go below 1010. So we're hot too, so it's 1010, 1011. Just let that cool down and have a look. So we've shut off our sparge water now. See the distance, we've got about 150 millimetres above the mash bed. Just to give us that extra weight to push the wort through. You can only really do that if your mash bed's set correctly. Otherwise all you end up, if it's not set correctly, all you'll do is just squash it even tighter. So if it didn't have the rice holes in it and set correctly, you couldn't add hot liquor on the top. It'd just make it worse. We'll just let that last runnings run through. We've got 10, 12, 10, 13. So we know that next 150 litres back into the kettle is going to be okay. Mash complete. Now we're going to dump the rest of the remaining wort out of the mash tun and dive through the fucking mash to look for my sparge unit. Just send the remainder to the trade waste. Hopefully I can find this. I really don't want to fucking make one. It's not the first time I've had to dive through grain to find something. Lost a spray ball before, but that's a bit bigger. Whoop, whoop. Pretty happy. Brewers, we're back, we're on the boil. Mash tun's clean. Let's go up and have a look. We're coming to the boil. Here's the hot break now. Here it is. Here it is. A couple of things here to remember. What we want to do is pre-acidify our wort to below 5 because that's where lactobacillus is happy, between 5 and 4.5. Pre-acidifying the wort also helps with head retention. And then the other thing, some brewers just say we'll boil for 20 minutes. But what we like to do is boil for as long as it takes to get our dissolved oxygen down to about 1 part per million or to, you know, the high billions. So we just use a benchtop DO meter for that. Nothing fancy. We'll take a sample in a second and we'll take it down. We'll get our pre-acidification pH just so we know how much citric acid to add. And we'll also check our dissolved oxygen. So we'll do a minimum of 20-minute boil anyway, but If it takes longer to get down to that dissolved oxygen, that's what we'll do. Plenty of protein in the hot break there. I'll take a sample. Go down to the desk. We're going to chill our sample so it's more accurate. Alright, let's check pH. Turn our benchtop DO meter on. We're around the 5.3 on the pH, so we're going to get some citric acid ready. Just going to start with 200 grams because we don't want to overshoot it. We don't want to have to add calcium carbonate to bring it back up. So we're shooting for 4.7. I'll add this. Let's quickly cal our benchtop DO meter. Best way to do it. Deiodorised water. Throw it in. Then we're going to bring it out, wipe the probe, and then sit it just above, waterline, hit cal. While we're waiting for that, we will check our gravity. See if we made target gravity. Shooting for 1036, and we got 1036.4, which is good. We got 1250 litres in the kettle. All right, this is our second sample. Probably takes about 20 minutes anyway to get your pH right and your dissolved oxygen right. Fit check. So that's our DO, 3.14 parts per million, and our pH. Second addition of citric acid, bring our pH down. Remember, we're chasing 4.7, watch the steam. So we've taken our second sample and we're at 5.09 on the pH, and our dissolved oxygen is coming down slowly. We're sitting at 3.38 parts per million.
Can you see that far?
Yeah, all right. We'll let that boil up again, we'll take another sample. Third sample. All right, we're getting close now. pH 4.84. In the DO, which I just finally got fucking calibrated. We are at 0.8, 0.77, so we're in the parts per billion now. So one more pH adjustment. It's probably been about 20 minutes anyway. It's in the parts per billion now.
That's good.
It is good. It's what we want. So I'm gonna slow up on the, I've been doing 200 gram additions. So I'm just gonna go back to 100 grams. 100 gram addition. Take a sample. So we know our DO's right now. We'll switch that meter off. Just chasing our 4.7 on the pH.
Hello YouTube again.
I reckon we made our pH, but we'll see. The further down the pH scale you get, the harder it gets to reach. You know what I'm saying? 36 degrees though, so it's going to bump up a bit once we get to temp. I'm just going to make another addition because we're going to be high. So we're going to do another 100 grams. See, when the lower we're trying to get, the more product we have to add. See, that first 200 gram addition brought us down to below 4, and now we're still adding 2s, and we're only coming down like a point at a time. 200 grams still. We're still adding the same amount, but it's getting harder and harder to bring our pH down. It's time. We've made our pH 4.7. We're going to switch off the kettle, start chilling the wort. Doing circles. Cold liquor in and ice pump on. And all we're doing now is recirculating back into the kettle just to bring it down to about 85 degrees so the whirlpool pump will work more efficiently. Important side note, never add hops to your wort before you sour it, because hops are a natural preservative and the lactobacillus will die. It'll kill the lactobacillus. Not all of it, but most of it. That's one reason we do our sours and our RTDs right after we've cleaned our kettle, just so it's a nice environment in the kettle for the lacto to have its anaerobic fermentation. Whistle any chance you get. Let's clean this. See ya, me sample. Happy when I'm brewing, eh? Yeah, until something breaks and I'm like, fuck. All right, let's check our temp. Kettle temp is 81.8, but we will have thermal separation. So remember that. At 80 degrees on the, because the PT100 sensor is about halfway on the kettle, we're getting thermal separation between the cold wort and the hot wort. It's not mixing fully. You see our kettle's 75. We're getting, it's 75 over the sensor, not the whole kettle. Kettle's probably still at 90. So we're going to stop our cold liquor in. Just going to turn off our pump. Now we're going to cut off at the cold liquor. Just going to let that run through till it heats again. Now we're going to send it to the whirlpool. I nearly fucking went arse up because I was looking at the camera, not the ground. All right, empty the rest of our kettle out. Then we're going to grab our paracetic acid. Didn't mean that, Shan. Grab our paracetic acid. And like I said before, because we've got a direct fire kettle, we're just trying to cool that kettle down. It's the paracetic acid, and it'll also sanitize the kettle as well. You've only got to get down to about 60 degrees and that's enough. Just trying to chill that stainless so the bacteria's got the best chance to thrive, Clary, to thrive. 53 degrees, that's good. Shut, shut, shut. All right, all that paracetic acid's out. Shut out the dump valve. Open, 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 open. Open. Cold liquor on. Manual pump, filling from the bottom up into the kettle. We're taking from the bottom of the whirlpool the dump valve because we want all the wort back in the kettle. We're not trying to separate any trub because there isn't any when there's no hop debris. And what we're doing here too is we're removing oxygen from the bottom up and out the kettle. And now we've just got one more kettle mod. This is going to be where we purge any of the head oxygen, any of the space in the kettle between the wort and the top of the kettle. Head oxygen, mate. Technical term. So what we need to be very conscious of, brewers, is our temperature within the kettle now. So we don't want to undershoot because we're going to start the kettle again. That's worst case scenario, you just start the kettle again, but we want to avoid that. We want to hit around 40 degrees C. 38's fine, 40 degrees in the colder months. So you hold that fermentation. They like between 30 and 40 degrees. You can find all the spec sheet on Safe Sour 256 on their website. Do your research. And if we're shooting, if we're a bit high, we can just slow our VSD down. So we're going through the heat exchange slower and in, so we get our wort cooler. But flat dick, we'll have to probably shut that valve, but we'll see. So you see our kettle, we're down to 28.9 now. So I'm just going to shut off our cold liquor in just for a bit, bring that temp back up. Just going to watch our kettle. Already feel that temp change. And if we have a look at our kettle, come back up from our 28 so we hit about 40 again. And then I'm going to fucking put it back on 32. Cold liquor's going in. Feels like I'm running hot there, I don't want to overshoot. Looking a bit cold there, Sean. Might just send it at that now, with just the cold water going through the one side of the heat exchange. See, we're taking from the centre dump valve of the whirlpool because we want all the wort back in the kettle at 40 degrees C. Just dumping the remainder of the wort from the kettle, from the whirlpool. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go blow the remainder of the wort with CO2. I'm going to get the wort out of the heat exchange, out of all the pipes and all into the kettle. If you want to have a look in the kettle, you'll see how that works. So we've blown all the wort out of the heat exchange, out of the pipe work and into the kettle. And we're also agitating the wort in the kettle, which that's going to give a consistent temperature. So we know we're 40 or below to pitch our bacteria. So we come up to 37, that's nearly spot on. I'm just going to agitate it one more time. And this also is running CO2 and purging out any more oxygen in it. So we're having an anaerobic fermentation. So our kettle's sitting at 37, and that's pretty well spot on where they recommend between 35 and 40. So I'm going to leave that CO2 pumping through. So now we're going to pitch our lactobacillus, which is LP652. Pitch roughly 100 grams for, it's 10 hec for 100 grams, but we've got 1250 in there. Sours it easily down to 3.2. Right, now you continue that agitation with the CO2. Then we're slowly going to tighten up our whey. And now we're purging with that CO2. Then if you just grab a dry rag, helps you tighten up this silicon gasket. Right, now I'm going to swap our CO2 and stop the agitation. You can check the kettle temp. Then I'm going to grab our auxiliary CO2 bottle and bring it round. Safety first, bend your knees. I'm going to set this auxiliary bottle to 30 pound to start with. I'm going to fill our headspace in the kettle. And we're going to purge it out. And fill again, put him up, 60 pound. And you'll hear any leaks in your kettle if you've got them, and tighten up your clamps. I'm going to purge it out. So removing that oxygen above. So in this fermentation, it doesn't become dissolved oxygen and give us off flavours like sulphur and egg. If you've ever had a sour and you bring it up to your nose and it smells like egg, it's a good chance they didn't purge their kettle of any oxygen. Remember, it's an anaerobic fermentation. Now, you shouldn't really pressurise them above 5 pound. All we're doing at the moment with the 40 is filling up, purging out, so we're removing oxygen. And then I'll just set this overnight at 5 pound. That's why we keep a CO2 bottle on it constantly too, because you'll have micro leaks in these silicon gaskets. My Australian welding, if you can hear that one, but there's 40 pound in it at the moment. So we just want a positive atmosphere in there of CO2. This is our last purge. Remember, what is key for an anaerobic fermentation is the absence of oxygen. Righto, let's pump it up to 5 pound. Pump, pump, pump. So we're just going to bring our bottle back to 5 pound, and you'll hear it still going in. So we'll bring that up to 5 pound, and then we're going to go check our temp one more time. If it's not 37, we're fucked. So we're good. 37.1, ideal temp. Put our whirlpool back to how it goes now. Righto, final checks. We're chasing 1036. We're 1037.7, which is good. We can dilute after the sour. And our pH, we're chasing 4.7, and we're 4.64. Now we're going to let the bacteria do its thing. We're shooting for a pH of 3.8. With this strain of bacteria, LP652, that'll acidify wort down to 3.2. That's usually what we do our Berliners at. With this one, just because we're trying to replicate that beer we had in Seoul, my guess was at around the 3.7 mark. So 24 hours in the kettle, we should get that. If not, just wait longer. Important things to note: purge your kettle, purge your kettle, purge your kettle. When you're souring, pre-acidify your wort, because that's where the lactobacillus is happy in that pH and other microbes aren't. So we don't want to introduce other microbes that are in the air. The anaerobic conditions of the kettle at the moment will also stop other bacteria from getting in, like there'd be Saccharomyces cerevisiae all around the brewery. That'll stop that getting in there and kicking off a fermentation. Also, the temperature of 35 to 40 degrees will stop any other yeast strains really in the kettle. The only other thing is if you can't purge your kettle, modify it so it can be purged. I was never able to purge this kettle. I've modified everything to do so. Some kettles can't be modified, like if you've got a nano brewery, you can't modify them. So just use a Philly sour. And if you're doing double batches to fill up one of your fermenters, just use a Philly sour, which that's a mixed fermentation of lactobacillus and ale yeast. Yeah, that's about it. See you tomorrow. Peace.